What's up, friends? Excited to be here. Excited to have a few of you hanging out and chatting today. I have no idea how this is going to go. First time ever doing this, but okay, second time. First time ever doing it live like this, just by myself. Obviously, did the live course with Joel and Luca a couple months back. Fit for Life. Hope you guys enjoyed that and appreciated that. But man, I'm excited. I got some questions here baked in. So if you don't want to ask anything or you just want to hang out, I'm totally cool with that. Or if you got questions, by all means, drop them in the chat. I will answer them as quickly as possible. But if you are new here or you know nothing about myself, I'm going to give you like the quickest elevator pitch and background story of Mike Robertson. So been in the game 24 years now. Started off like most of us. I loved training. I loved working out. I loved sports, but not quite good enough to play anything at a high level. Basketball, I played my entire life. Obviously, got the iFast basketball gear on today. And then moved into volleyball, played that for a couple years, baseball, ran cross country, basically all the sports, but realized very quickly that I was better at working out than I was at going in the gym, or I was better at working out than I was at playing any of those sports. So for me, getting into the gym was just a real eye-opening experience. It was really fun because I got to go in there each and every day. I got to work on my body, work on myself, and that allowed me to basically get better at any sport that I played, whether it was improving my vertical jump in basketball, whether it was, having more range on my jump shot, being able to body some of these bigger opponents. Like the weight room was always there for me. So whether I had a good game, bad game, the weight room didn't matter. I could always go in, work on my body and get better. So went to school at Ball State for 4 years, got an exercise science degree. Like a lot of us, had no clue what that was going to entail, had no clue what kind of jobs I could get, because in those 4 years, I spent exactly 0 days in the weight room actually training and coaching other people. So as I was wrapping up my undergraduate career, I took a position, basically an internship at the athletic weight room. And that's where I really fell in love with, the coaching side of all this. So that's kind of like the short of it. That's what got me started. From there, I did a little bit of everything. I worked in a rehab facility for 3 years. Obviously learned a lot there. Wasn't my favorite experience professionally because that wasn't at that point in time what I was looking for, right? Like rehabbing like a 75-year-old person that needs a knee replacement wasn't super exciting for me. So spent my 3 years there, learned a ton. Don't get me wrong. I learned a ton. Then moved down to Indianapolis, did in-home one-on-one personal training for 3 years. So that was quite an experience in and of itself, because we're talking about some of Indianapolis's most wealthy people. Going into their homes every day, working with them was pretty exciting. And then for the last 16 years now, Bill Hartman and I have been running iFast, and that has been the best experience I could ever imagine, because Bill was like, in many ways, he was the mentor that I always wanted and needed. So to be able to go in and work with him every day and learn from him has been a truly special experience. So that is a little bit about me. And again, I've got questions here, but if you have questions, feel free, pop into the chat. It looks like I already got one from Jeff. So I'm going to answer these questions as they come. And look, it's open game here. There's no rules, there's no regulations. So anything you want to ask, put it out there and I will do my best to answer it. So Jeff wants to know, how would you incorporate calf training into a program? So Jeff, to start, it really depends on what your end goal is. And calf and Achilles training is something I put a major emphasis on, obviously in the basketball space. There's a lot of calf and Achilles issues, but also just with the Gen Pop. A lot of people want to get out these days. They want to jog on a regular basis. They want to play pickleball. So if that sounds like you, and that sounds like something you want to work on, what I'll generally do is, depending on how many days a week you're in the gym, I'll try and at least get 2 days of dedicated calf work into somebody's program. So the first day is going to be a straight leg focus, so like a gastroc focused exercise. And the second day is going to be a bent knee exercise, because that's going to emphasize training the soleus muscle. So generally, I will start there. Now, a couple tips and tricks that I think will be beneficial for you. When you're doing this stuff, number one, slow it down. Obviously, anytime you're doing calf and Achilles stuff, the Achilles is just a massive piece of connective tissue. So a lot of times what people want to do is they want to bounce. And look, that's what it's good at. So we need to train the opposite. So I like to go slow and controlled, like slow concept. Well, let me take that back. Slow, eccentric, fast, concentric. So really working on controlling the eccentric, coming up at a normal or fast explosive pace. And then I like higher volume stuff because I like to really rebuild those connective tissues. So sets of 10, 12, maybe as many as 15 reps. The other thing I will say that's very, very important when you're doing this stuff beyond the two types of exercises and beyond like the higher volume, slower cadence is you really got to go through a full range here. And this is something I've seen a lot of times with my athletes is as they're going through this stuff, they're just very like short and choppy through their range. So a couple cues that I like to give people are number one, go through a full range in the sense that you want to get a little stretch in your calf and in your Achilles when you're lowering. But perhaps even more importantly, I want you to come straight up through your big toe like you're going to toe off. And what you find is a lot of people that can use a lot of weight normally, if they're just using a short, choppy range, the second you break it down, you slow the movement down and you ask them to go through a full range, you have to cut the weight that they're using in half. So I would start with that. And it sounds very simple, very basic, but those simple rules make a profound impact on how people that have calf and Achilles issues feel. So that's how I'd incorporate it into your workouts, Jeff. If you got any follow-up questions, let me know. But I think that's how I would start with it. And that's how I start most of the people that I'm working with at the gym. Okay, next. Saul wants to know, where are you with heels elevated squats? Where does it work best? And when does it work less effectively? Okay. So Saul, great question. And I was actually just having this discussion with one of our new coaches at the gym the other day. So a lot of times, or at least let's go in the Wayback Machine. Let's go back 15, 20 years. We would say that somebody that's using a heel lift has an ankle mobility restriction. And so we need to be doing more ankle mobility work. And while that could be the case, and there are absolutely instances where somebody has an isolated ankle issue that needs to be addressed, in more cases than not, all the heel lift is doing is shifting their center of gravity back. So the way I'll describe this to somebody is, hey, here's what I want you to do. I want you to shift your weight as far forward as you can. So stand up, shift your weight as far forward as you can. So you're basically on your toes. And then try and squat as deep as you can. And in most cases, they realize, oh, this is very hard. Like I can't squat very deep. And then to counteract that or to show the opposite, I'll say, okay, now I want you to stand flat footed. I want you to reach your arms out as far in front of you as you can. So you shift your center of gravity back. And now I want you to squat as low as you can. And lo and behold, they squat deeper. It feels better and it's more effortless as a whole. So what I would explain to those people is, look, you may have some ankle stuff that we need to work on, and that's cool. We will work on that in your program. But on the flip side, what you have, more importantly, is a center of gravity issue. Your center of gravity is pushed too far forward. So what we need to do is shift your center of gravity back. And that's what heel elevation does. Whether you're using Olympic shoes, whether you're using a slant board, it just allows your clients and your athletes to shift their center of gravity back so that they can kind of relax those muscles on the back side of their body and they can change levels more effectively. So I would say I don't look at this as a crutch. I don't look at this as a panacea. I look at this as something that I'm going to incorporate in a lot of people's programs for the life of their program, because a lot of clients and athletes struggle to shut this tone on the backside of their body off. For some of them, it's just how they're shaped. It's how they're built. For others, especially in the older populations, it's really hard to create these massive adaptations when somebody's 50, 60, 70 years old. So instead of, hoping and praying that someday I'm going to have somebody be able to squat with feet flat, butt to calves, probably not going to happen. So instead, I'll use those slant boards to help shift them back. And then that allows me to more effectively help them like train a squat or train a split squat. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't look at it as a crutch. I look at it as a teaching tool that's going to help them shift their center of gravity back. It's going to help them squat and lunge, or really any activity that's kind of in that realm. It's going to help them change levels more effectively. So Saul, great question, man. I hope that helps. And then Jeff wants to know, how about tib raises? Okay. So I know tib raises are kind of like a hot topic these days. I don't know if like open chain tib raises are super important. What I will say is tibialis anterior is important. And if you follow Bill Hartman's stuff, one of the things that he talks about is recapturing tibial internal rotation. So all that means is like your tibia, that lower leg bone, when you go into like a middle propulsion or knees over toes type position, the tibia needs to internally rotate. And so you'll see a lot of people, and I see this a lot in basketball, where their lower leg is turned out, right? So maybe they have like this like turning outward of their lower leg, and then their foot is really kicked out to the side. So that's somebody that probably needs tibialis anterior work, but it's not in the sense of, hey, I'm just going to do like tib raises. Instead, what they need is their foot flat on the ground, and then they need to learn how to maintain a tripod foot position, right? So 3 points of contact under the first met head, the fifth met head, and the center of the heel. So they need a tripod foot position, and they need to learn how to keep their foot, knee, and hip in line while they let their knee come over their toe. So that's more true tibialis work, in my opinion. And I feel like that's what most people need. Rather than the open chain stuff, they need it more in closed chain, and they need to learn how to use tibialis anterior to internally rotate their tibia. So that's like kind of out there for a lot of people because they don't think of it like that. Like most people just think of that as an ankle mobility drill. But I think the way you set it up, the way you coach and cue it is super important. You got to have 3 points of contact. You got to maintain a good heel contact. You need to get knee over toe. And if you're doing it right, you do say 8 to 10 reps. Like I'll do it in, you could do it in a split squat or something like that. A lot of times I'll do it in a warm up, like a mini bowler squat, where you're just kind of like a little single leg squat, but your opposite leg is either going behind you or just slightly supporting your body. So you're doing that little like mini bowler squat, just trying to capture knee over toe position with a tripod foot. And if you do that correctly, a lot of times you're going to get that tibialis anterior to come on. That's what I feel like you really need it for. It's not for the open chain stuff. It's more in the closed chain to recapture tibial IR. So Jeff, I hope that helps your answer your question. That's all the questions I have here for right now. So a question that I got from Steve, I believe this was via Instagram a couple days ago, was Steve wanted to know what are some of the biggest programming mistakes that I have made over the year. And man, this is a tough one because I have made a lot of mistakes. I think the longer you do this, the more you realize some of the mistakes you made. But I'm a big believer also that as long as you're learning from them and as long as you're getting better with every program you write, you're on the right track. So I would say, just thinking like big picture, and if you know my R7, we've got release, reset, readiness, reactive, resistance, resiliency, and recovery. Those are like the 7 R's, and they basically depict all the different stages of a workout. So if we could dive into a couple of those, when it comes to training gen pop and athletes, number one would be not getting enough R4 reactive speed, agility, and power work in my programs. A lot of this was based on the fact I was a power lifter growing up. I don't look like it anymore, but I used to love powerlifting. I loved pushing heavy weights, and I felt like everybody needed to push really heavy weights to be successful. So I kind of got too far in that direction and kind of missed the forest for the trees. So I would say number one, especially with athletes, but also with gen pop clients, making sure we're getting some form of speed or power development in their programs. And if you look at my workouts now, all of my gen pop clients, regardless of kind of their end goals, are going to do some form of power work in their program. And that could be as simple as incorporating some kettlebell swings, some medicine ball throws. You know, if they like to go out and do sports, hey, let's do some jump rope. You know, you find ways to challenge them athletically without like pushing them too far, right? Because I'm not trying to turn, you know, my 50-year-old, you know, CEO, exec, whatever, that wants to play pickleball on the weekends and go for jogs once or twice a week. I'm not trying to turn him into an NBA athlete. But I think maintaining some of those physical qualities, especially as we age, is important. So that would be number one. Number two, I kind of already alluded to this, but putting too big of an emphasis on strength development. And I think this is something a lot of us learn as we age. It's not that strength isn't important, but it's not the only physical quality we need to push. And as a power lifter, again, I love strength training. I love getting in the gym and, you know, uncorking a big squat or just ripping a big deadlift. But I also started to realize over the years that, hey, just because these are my goals doesn't mean these other people that I'm training have the same goals that I do. So whether it was gen pop people, not trying to turn them into power lifters, or my athletes, like the bar speeds at which you move a heavy squat or deadlift are not in any way similar to what you do in sport. Sports are fast. There are time constraints involved. So it's not to say that I never do any heavy lifting with my athletes, but, you know, if we do, it's more in like the 3 to 5 rep range, definitely no heavy singles. And almost always there is an element of speed tied into that. So I use a lot of velocity-based training with my athletes to make sure, hey, we're not trying to grind out heavy ones, twos, and threes. If we are going to go heavier, we're going to put it on a gym aware so we know exactly what bar speed we're training at and to make sure we're getting the adaptation that we want. So that would be number two, too much emphasis on just pure heavy strength training. And then the third one would be just a general lack of understanding and therefore a lack of programming of conditioning. And this was something where, man, I'm thinking back to like 2009, 2010, IFAST 1.0, when Joel Jamieson's work first started coming to the mainstream. And I was working with an MMA fighter. And this guy was like, look, man, like I really want to be able to go for 3 5-minute rounds. So that kind of started that whole process for me. Because up to that point, there was like no thought of conditioning. Like maybe you do some glycolytic work, right? We'd go 30 on, 90 off on a fan bike for 3 rounds, because that was one of the primary tools that we had was a Gold Schwinn Airdyne at IFAST. So we do some of that, but it was not anywhere near as detailed and as thought out as it is now. So as we have a better understanding of the aerobic system, the importance of the aerobic system, and whether we're talking about team sports athletes, where you need that aerobic development to kind of refuel the anaerobic stores, or we're talking about Gen Pop clients that just want to move better, feel better, live longer, you got to have a sound approach to conditioning. So those would be my main three. Not enough emphasis on speed and power development, making sure we got that in there, reducing the emphasis on heavy strength training, and then last but not least, having a better understanding of conditioning and where it fits into a program, both for my Gen Pop clients and for my athletes. So fantastic question there. Okay, I do not know how to pronounce this name, but what are the most effective ways of R6 in the program? Because we have like 10 or 15 minutes for this in each session. Okay, so this is a really good question. So if you only have 10 to 15 minutes for your R6 or your conditioning component, there's a couple tools that I really, really like. Number one would be explosive repeats. Joel calls them explosive repeats. But essentially think about, let's say we have a minute, right? And EMOMs are, valuable in some senses. If nothing else, EMOM or every minute on the minute are a fantastic tool because people know exactly how long it's going to take. So one of the things that I'll do is I'll use EMOM, but not in the sense of like 30 on, 30 off, because that's going to be glycolytic very, very quickly. What I like to do is shorter bursts. So let's say we're pushing a prowler. We'll go 6 or 8 seconds on and then 52 to 54 seconds off. So what you're doing is you're getting that high intensity burst, 6 to 8 seconds, but then you have the rest of the minute to recover. So for me, I'm always thinking about if I can start somebody at like a 1 to 5, 1 to 6, maybe even like 1 to 8 work to rest ratio starting off, then I'm going to ensure that, yes, we're hitting the alactic system with the fast explosive part of that. But then when we're resting, it's all aerobic. The aerobic system is working in the background to refuel those energy stores. So I really like EMOM in that sense. And it's different than how most people apply it, right? A lot of times it's like 20 on, 40 off, 30 on, 30 off. I don't necessarily do it like that. You can in certain instances, but if I'm trying to develop more the aerobic engine, I like those shorter bursts, longer rests, and then you just tease it out 10 to 15 minutes. Because I tell you what, if you're really working explosively for that 6, 8, 10 seconds, and then you get the rest of that minute off, it may not be hard the first 3 or 4, but by rep 10, 12, or 15, you're huffing and puffing pretty good. So I really like that. A second option would just be tempo or oxidative lifting. That can be done in a very short period. If you're unfamiliar with that method, it's basically, let's say you're doing a squat. Instead of just doing a regular squat and, come down, stand up, whatever cadence you want, tempo or oxidative squats or push-ups are done in a very continuous fashion. So if you're doing a squat, it might be 1, 2, 3 seconds coming down, 1, 2, 3 seconds coming back up. You don't pause, right? There's no pause. You're not unlocking or locking the joints at the top. You're immediately right back into the next rep. So you're doing these continuous reps. And I'll start with a lot of people at 40 seconds on, 60 seconds off, 3 to 4 rounds. So you can imagine there, what is that? Like 6 to 8 minutes of total work. That's going to really tax the slow twitch muscle fibers. And I know a lot of times people are like, no, we don't want slow twitch. We want to be fast and explosive. But the slow twitch fibers are there for a reason. They're our most aerobic enhanced, if you will, our most aerobically developed muscle fiber. So if you're working with people that want to develop their aerobic engine, build a bigger slow twitch fiber because they have more capillaries, they've got more mitochondria. They are built to sustain energy production. So I really like those two. And then I'll give you a third if you want it. It can be tempo intervals. This could be tempo running. This could be tempo like on a fan bike. But what I'll do there is think 10 to 15 second bursts. Again, this time you're at like 70% intensity. But you'll go, I actually just did this morning, not to go on too hard of a tangent, but you can do this in 10, 15, 20 minutes. Go for a jog, 70%, or get on the fan bike, 70%, 10, 15 seconds, and then you get the rest of the minute off. So like 45 seconds off. So another version of EMOM. But since the intensity is sub-maximal, it's like 70%, it's great for just building that aerobic engine. So those are 3 strategies that I use regularly with my clients and athletes in those shorter periods of time to get a really good training effect. Now, if somebody's just looking for, hey, it's a month to spring break, I've been doing all the aerobic development stuff, by all means, get some lactic work in there. I mean, it's miserable, right? But if you're doing it at a high level, you can see really massive changes in as little as 4 to 6 weeks, taxing that lactic system. So there's a couple different strategies there. It really just depends on what your goals are. If you want the aerobic development, use like the tempo intervals, the oxidative stuff, the alactic aerobic repeats. Or if you want more lactic development, you want to really make a push to like lean out, or you're getting ready for a fight or camp or something like that, I'll do a couple weeks of lactic work just to expose that and just to make sure they're ready for it. So fantastic question, man. Hope that helps. Oh, man. Okay, next. Saul wants to know, what are new assessments we are using? So I don't know if it's new per se. I'll give you a couple things that we're using, Saul. Number one, for me, it's always about, first and foremost, figuring out what a client can or can't do. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we made at iFast for many years. We'd put people on tables and, we're like, checking hip IR and shoulder IR. And these are Gen Pop people. All they want to do is move around and lose a little bit of body weight. So we lost a lot of people early on because, we're doing all this random stuff on a table and we're thrilled that they recapture 10 degrees of hip IR. Meanwhile, they're like, what are we even doing? I'm not a PT person. So one of the biggest shifts we made was going to just a very movement-based assessment. So when I bring somebody in, we're going to do like posture photos. We're going to do a few isolated table tests that I think are valuable, whether it's hip IR and ER, shoulder IR and ER, ISA. We're going to do those on the table, but then we're going to get them up and moving. So for me, I want to watch somebody squat. I want to watch them lunge, hinge, touch their toes, do a push-up, really foundational stuff. And once we've gone through that, I would say a couple new things that we're doing, and they're not applicable to everybody. If you follow Bill, Bill's really into foot and ankle type stuff right now, especially the foot, because it's the first point of contact with the ground. It's literally how we absorb, distribute, and then create force up through our body to push us forward. So looking more at feet, and again, part of that is my demographic. I have so many basketball players and a handful of soccer, volleyball. I have a couple random outliers, but in basketball, foot and ankle is very, very important, not just because of how it feels on the foot, ankle, Achilles complex, but the changes you get up the chain as well, because you get a lot of people that have knee stuff that is being driven because of how their foot is contacting the ground. So I'm looking more at just like a foot and ankle assessment. I'm looking at more at their ability to get their knees over their toes. And again, coming back to that kind of tibialis anterior thing, if somebody's foot is way out here, or if they've got all these like little turns down their thigh and down their shin bone, that's probably going to tell me like, hey, all these little twists are adding up to some issues that we need to address. So I'm generally looking at that because I want that congruency between the foot, the knee, and the hip. I want it in a straight line, and I want it to be able to drive straight forward if and when possible. Then the other thing for me is force plate testing. And I know not everybody has access to force plates. If you train Gen Pop clients, please don't turn the stream off now, because it's not maybe important for everybody to do this, but for me and in my environment, it's very important. From a performance perspective, everybody wants to know where they measure up. So, if you're a high school kid that wants to play in college, it's great to say, hey, look, here are your numbers. Here are the college D1 players. This is where we need to get you to physically. Or same thing, college player that wants to play in the pros. Those are incredibly valuable, and it gives them some markers and some KPIs to chase in the gym that are meaningful to them. It's not just, hey, how much can we trap bar deadlift or how much can we back squat? It's, hey, here's the power development, here's the vertical jump, here's the reactivity that I need you to be able to exhibit, fit to physically be able to fit in at this next level. So that's incredibly valuable. But another piece of this is that a lot of the athletes that I get now are not 100% healthy. And part of that is just the sheer volume of games that they're playing. Part of that is like the unique niche and demographic that I work with. I get a lot of return to play people. So the force plates are really valuable because now I can go in, and when somebody's coming off an injury, I can show them very clearly asymmetries. And while I could see it in a weight room, right? I could say, oh, look, you're shifting to this side, or hey, when you do your split squat on your right versus your left, you do this versus that. Like that's in some way valuable, but to have those objective numbers and to say very clearly, hey, look, you don't feel like you're 100%. Here's how this looks when you jump. And if I can show them, look, you have a 15, 20, maybe a 25% discrepancy between, your right and your left leg, like that's impactful, that's meaningful, and that's something we need to tease out and we need to address in your programming. Because a lot of times what I'm seeing is kids are being released to go back to their sport, and maybe they checked the certain boxes, whatever, that they needed to do to get out of rehab. But when I get them, I'm like, you're not 100%. Like you're not anywhere near where you need to be to play at a high level or to play at the level you're accustomed to. So that's been really valuable for me, is being able to have that objective data and those objective numbers to show people and to track those over time. Because that's what program design is, right? Like if we take this back to fat loss is easy, or strength gain is easy in the sense that it's easy to track and monitor. Is the scale going down? Okay, great. We're doing what we need to. Are your numbers going up in the gym? Okay, great. That's meaningful. But when it comes to something like breaking, right, or right-left asymmetries, that's really hard to tease out. And it's really hard to be objective about unless you have some tech behind you. So, I got the Hawking hat on. Shout out to them. They've been amazing to work with. But I think that's something, Saul, that I've been incorporating more of, and it's been really valuable. It's allowed me to really hone in and get even more specific with my program design. So that's it, man. I hope that helps answer your question. Again, maybe not applicable to everybody out there, but if you are in this kind of space and you're doing return to play, I think the more information you have, the better decisions you can ultimately make. Okay, very cool. Next, Rowie, I hope I said your name correctly, wants to know, what does a typical weight room session for a basketball player look like? So a lot of this depends on the time of year and where we're at in their off season. So I'll give you a couple examples, Rowie. And if you came in like fresh start of an off season, it's probably not that exciting. We're doing a lot of stuff with our shoes off. We're going to drag sleds to try and help them learn how to shift back again, how to feel their feet again, just generally try and get them moving and feeling better. And the sled for me is just such a wonderful tool because you start to rebuild some strength, you start to rebuild some movement capacity. And that's such a big piece of that first block. You have to restore movement capacity or movement quality, however you want to think about it. A lot of times what you see is that over the course of a season, people lose certain things, right? Like they lose their ability to change levels. They lose some of their connective tissue strength. So when I get people, generally their squat doesn't look good, their split squat doesn't look good, their knees and their Achilles are cranky. So the first month of the program is just unwinding and unpacking all of those issues. So we'll start most sessions by some form of sled dragging, backwards, laterally, just something to get them moving and feeling better. We're going to put a big emphasis on time under tension and rebuilding connective tissue in the weight room. So we're going to do goblet squats, PVC squats, like iso squat holds. We're going to do push-up variations to get them reaching, front foot elevated stuff to help shift their center of gravity back. That's a huge emphasis early on because over the course of a basketball season, you just get pushed further and further forward. So, while a lot of people are like, oh, they're losing their hip motion or they're losing their ankle motion. Yes. And again, there's the isolated stuff that goes into that, but also part of this is systemic. They're just getting pushed so far forward They can't control their center of gravity, and they lose their ability to change levels. So, also when that happens, you lose your ability to distribute forces. So now instead of using like your glutes and your hamstrings and all these muscles to help distribute forces, now all that is going through your Achilles or through your patellar tendon. So longer duration type stuff, we're going to spend time in half kneeling. A lot of, if you follow some of the stuff that I put up here on the YouTubes lately, a lot of my reaching like rowing variations, all of the activities like short seated lat pull downs, cobra lat pull downs, things to just try and recapture some motion through the thorax. That's the biggest thing. If I had to say like what does an off season session look like, we're trying to recapture range of motion, we're trying to rebuild connective tissues, and we're starting to lay the foundation for getting them back into sport specific movement. Because a lot of times that first month, they don't really want to be on a court. If we're being honest, like they may go and get shots up and they may go just because it's part of their routine, but they're not in there like doing heavy ones or trying to get run first week in the off season. They just want to feel better. And then as the off season progresses, then we get into more and more challenging stuff. So if you think about what a typical workout would look like, whether it's mid to late off season, we're going to put a heavy emphasis on the movement stuff. So in R4, we're chasing their ability to move quickly laterally, right? Or change directions side to side. We're working on their ability to accelerate 1 to 3 steps. We're looking at their ability to decelerate, whether that's in like a closeout or in like a lunge stop type position. So we're going to start with our speed and power development. It's always contextual to basketball. Then we're going to get in the weight room. Generally, we're chasing some outputs there. The high level guys, it's just restoring their outputs, because if you have, a 12-2 vertical jump, you don't need to squat and deadlift a ton of weight. We just need to get you back up to whatever is like a good threshold for you. So we're just chasing and like restoring outputs. And then one of the things that I really like to use a lot here lately is flywheel stuff, because I think flywheels are great in the sense that you get that explosive concentric, but then the harder you push on the concentric, the more you have to accept and distribute those forces when you come back down. So it's a very emphasized eccentric. I know it's not eccentric overload, so I don't want people to come on here and, the flywheel that I have is not eccentrically overloaded. There are ones that can do that, but it's eccentric emphasis training. And I think that's such a big piece of this, because the longer I'm in sport, the more I realize, hey man, once you have the juice and the physical outputs to jump high or run fast, that sort of thing, you got to make sure you have the brakes to offset it, because that's where most people get hurt. They get hurt in those transitions. They get hurt in those eccentric and isometric phases. So we need to find ways to really tax and emphasize that in training. And I love to emphasize that in the weight room first. I always try and be a step ahead. So, hey, we're going to hit that heavy flywheel stuff first before they go and they start playing ones or threes or getting run. And then by the end of the off season, I mean, it's kind of bittersweet, because the first 2 months I'm kind of the show and I get to put a big emphasis on what I do. By the time, third month rolls around or we're in that final block, really it's just more maintenance for me. Maybe we're putting some finishing touches on their movement, make sure that their speed and agility work is clean, make sure their conditioning is where they need it. But yeah, by the end of the off season, all the hard work is done. It's really just making sure that they feel really good going into camp. And that's something that I've tried to put a big emphasis on with all of my athletes, is like, look, if you don't feel good when you leave me, it's going to be really hard to work your way into that at any point during the season. Because it's not like coaches really care. Like if you're a high level player, they want you to play. They want you to practice. They want you to play. So it's really hard to get healthy as the season goes on, because there's too many competing demands. So I really put an emphasis on, hey, let's get you feeling great right now, so that when you get into the season, then it's just maintenance mode for what you need to do in the weight room. So fantastic question, man. Really like that, Roey. I hope that helps. Saul says, I've been killing it with the content. Thank you, my guy. Appreciate that. I'm trying, man. I'm really trying. I'm playing the longest of long games here with the videos, the podcasts. Like, I just want to make the space better. And I hope you guys appreciate that. I hope you guys are getting something out of it. If there's stuff you want to see, whether it's content wise, like videos, if there are people you want to see me interview on the podcast, please let me know that. Happy to accommodate whenever possible. So I'm going to take a quick sip. Got the Mandalorian here. All right. Next, we got Catalyst physical therapy and wellness. First off, thank all you guys for hanging out. This is fun. I'm kind of into Star Wars, and this guy has like, I don't know, 3 million followers, and he had like 2,000 people in his chat the other day. So I'm just excited there's 12. So that means it's more than just my family watching this right now. Okay, so Catalyst Physical Therapy and Wellness says, what are some of the talking points you've been giving athletes that train year-round in sport about the importance of the gym? And what are you testing to ensure recovery is taken when needed? Okay, let's start with the first one here about this importance of being in the gym. I think this is something you have to instill on and on and on incessantly. And I think you have to start with like the most minimum effective dose. That is 1 day a week. And I think maybe when we tried early on, we went for like pie in the sky optimal, like, oh man, I'd love to see you twice a week. And man, I just know like logistically now, having kids of my own, that's really hard. It's really hard, especially if they're a high level kid. They're getting pulled in so many directions. So I start very early on, both with the child and with the parents, instilling this importance of, hey, look, you can't ghost me for 6, 8, 9 months and then expect to come out of this unscathed. And part of it is just the way sports are now. Like, it's insane. Like, I'll give you 2 examples. So in soccer, my daughter's in 7th grade, and she's on a pretty top tier team. So they just started their outdoor season last week. So March 1. And this is way earlier. Like, she was on a lower level team last year. They didn't start till after spring break. So they didn't start till April. And then it was like a 2-month season. But the highest level teams are playing year round. Like, if they get a solid 4 to 6 week off season in 7th, 8th grade, like, that's amazing. So I try and explain to them, like, just understand this. Like, if I only see you for 4 to 6 weeks, there's no way the changes that we make are going to stick for the next 10 to 11 months. Like, that's just not physiologically possible. And most people with common sense understand that. So I try and just help them understand, look, you got to be consistent about this. And then I start talking about, where does this fit into your week? Because I think part of it is just mentally like helping people understand, well, I've got this and this and this. They're saying all the reasons they can't make it happen. So I'm trying to help them understand, okay, hey, maybe Monday. You don't have practice Monday. There's no other commitments Monday. Can we get you in on Monday? I just need 45 minutes. So starting to plant that seed. And then I'll start to really attack it with whichever one I feel like I'm getting more traction with. Now, I've been lucky. Maybe I'm just more persuasive than I think, or maybe it's just the people I work with are just like really smart and in tune. All the parents I've talked to understand the value of it. A lot of the kids tend to understand it as well. And I think part of that is because a lot of them have had injuries already. Maybe not major injuries, right? But something that's kept them out for 3 to 4 months. And they don't want to go through that again. So they kind of understand, and they start to put 2 and 2 together, like, oh, so if I stay in here even a little bit, I stay on the court or I stay on the pitch more. And then when I have an off season, then I take like an actual off season. I take a break. I get in with you a little bit more. So that helps me level up. Yes. That's how you have to start thinking about this. It's not something that you just do when you have time. Like, if you want to be really good at this and you want to play at, the high schools around here are like colleges. I mean, it's so competitive. It's ridiculous. But like, if you want to play on varsity at your local high school, if you want to play in Division I, or you want to play in college, period, you got to start trading your body the way those people do. And I'm not saying you have to be in the gym and training 6 days a week, but you got to start thinking more like a pro. And that's the way I always try and describe it to people. It's like, hey, look, you want to play at a Division I school? Okay, here's what Division I players do. Oh, you want to be a professional? You want to get paid to play? Okay, this is what those people do. And it's pretty cool because you can see the levels to this as people get older. So like your high school kids, sometimes you have to pull some teeth. Like, hey, look, I get it. You want to go hang out with your friends, or you want to play Xbox or PlayStation. Okay. But if you want to play in college and you want to have a successful career, here's what those guys are doing. Even in season, they're in the gym 2 to 3 days a week. They're doing something. So I can't not see you for 4 months and then you expect to be feeling as good at the end of your season as when you left me at the start. It doesn't work like that. So that's like the starting point of the discussion. And then, there's some tangents in there. Sometimes it comes down to, okay, what do I feel like this person needs to hear? But that's how I start the conversation is, look, a lot of times it's dangling the carrot of, okay, you want to get better? Here's what you have to do that. Then the second question was, what are you testing to ensure recovery is taken when needed? Okay, so this is good. One of the first pieces here, and again, this is where the force plate comes in. You can look at some of the metrics on the force plate. Generally, it's not so much jump height because what you find is in jump height, it's not the most sensitive measure. Like I could go in one day and jump zero point 0.4 and do it really fast and explosive, and then 2 days later be absolutely smashed. Slept like 3 hours, legs are sore, and I could still maybe jump 0.39 or something like that. But the way I achieve that jump is totally different, right? It's a much more muscular focused jump. So if you have access to plates, that would be it. Look, for the first like 15 years of IFAST, we didn't have force plates. So what I did in most cases was, okay, get a feel for number one, what's their training schedule been like? A lot of Q&A up front. How's the body feeling? What's going on? How much did you play this weekend? And I think that's one of the things that's always surprising to me, especially in basketball. Like soccer is tough, but man, the basketball schedule now is even crazier than it was in the past, where you'll have, an entire school season. Immediately, you maybe get a week off, and then you're into your AAU season. Depending on your school, some will play what's called June ball, where they're going and maybe playing 10 to 12 games in a week, but all at different cities. So like if you're local here, you may go to University of Toledo on a Tuesday and play 4 games in one day, come back, Wednesday off, and then Thursday you go to Ohio State or you go somewhere else. It's absolutely insane. So they have that in June, and then a lot of times in July they recap and they do more with their AAU team. So all that being said, I'm constantly asking questions, right? I'm constantly getting a gauge for how their body is, what's going on. I'm talking to the parents. One of the best things you can do is literally just get them in the gym, watch them walk in. You can very quickly tell who's ready to have a good session, who's not, just by being attentive and observant to how people walk into the gym and their energy. And then I've got a very standard warm up that I kind of take everybody through. They've got their own resets, and sometimes we've got little things we're working on, but I got a very general warm up. And it's amazing. You watch how dynamic their warm up is. You look at the speed and cadence. You look at their rhythm. You look at just their energy and enthusiasm going through that warm up. That's going to tell you most of what you need to know about their preparedness to train that day. So hope that helps. That was a great question. And let's see who we got next. All right. We got Ross. What's up, Ross? Ross wants to know, how do you manage strength and plyometric training for prep athletes who are playing practically year-round with the combination of high school and AAU in travel seasons? Okay, so my philosophy with these types of athletes is we're always filling in the gaps of what they don't get from their sport or what they can't get in season. So here's what I mean by that. If you train a basketball player, like it or not, they're jumping a lot. Between practice, skill development, games, they're jumping a lot. So in a lot of cases, I don't do a lot of jumping. And I know that like ruffles some feathers sometimes, and parents are like, oh, why aren't we jumping more? Well, because your kid just got like 10,000 foot contacts over the last 2 hours. Like they're not ready to do more. And if we do, it's not going to make them any better. In fact, it could make them worse. So in season, that's where I will do a lot of the strength training emphasis. And it depends on how much time and energy they have to dedicate to the weight room. Maybe it's only 2 good sets of a goblet squat or a 2 kettlebell front squat. Sometimes we're just like tapping into that and maintaining the quality. And then we're picking and choosing when we have those times where, okay, we've got this little dedicated break. Now we're going to put an emphasis on, hey, now we're going to actually try and get stronger. Now we're going to try and improve your vertical jump with, whatever kind of jump training we have deemed is valuable for you. But you just gotta respect the fact that when people are in season, that is the emphasis. And this is where, as strength coaches, look, I made this mistake for a long time. It's always like, oh, well, you're here, we got to get work in. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I had to learn over the years was like, look, whether they're here or not, I have to always ask myself, what is their ability to adapt to what I'm giving them? And if somebody comes in the gym and they just played 4 games the day before, they're absolutely just smashed. You can just tell, like they've got no energy, no juice. They walk around, they look like the Tin Man, like they're not bending, they're not rotating. Look, I'm not going to get anything valuable out of that session by smashing that kid. So we're going to do like a recovery day, and I'm going to make it look like they're doing stuff. We're going to drag a sled. Maybe we do some like goblet squats to restore motion, some front foot elevated stuff. Maybe we'll do some tendon work, like some Spanish squats, things of that nature. I'm going to try and make it fun. If it's a teenage boy, hey, we're going to get in the gym. Let's do some arms. Let's do some arms and abs. Because what 16-year-old dude ever said, I don't want to do arms and abs? So I'll just try and find ways to make it fun and let them kind of switch off psychologically while still checking some boxes physiologically. And for those people too, when they come in, maybe the end is just like, hey, I'm going to put you on the spin bike for 10 minutes. I just want you to flush your legs out. So my biggest defining factor, if you're going to come and work out with me, and it doesn't matter whether you're a Gen Pop client, an athlete, whatever state you come to me, my litmus test for a good session is that you walk out feeling better than how you felt walking in. So if you were smashed coming in, I can't do anything about that, right? And hopefully I didn't do that. But if you come in and you're absolutely smashed, okay, my job is to make you move and feel better before you walk out the door. Like, oh no, I'm gonna be better tomorrow or the next day when I have to go do this again. So that's always been my litmus test, or at least here lately. It's not about, oh, well, they're here, we got to get more work in. Because I had kids, like when we first opened the gym, I would have kids that literally would max out on like squat, bench, and power clean that day, and then come in the gym and they're like, all right, what are we going to do? You're always thinking, oh, well, we got to do something. They're paying for the session, or their parents are paying for the session. Yeah, they are. But that's where you have to be a professional and say, look, you just killed yourself in the gym today. I'm just going to try and make sure you move and feel great. So the next time you come in or the next session you have, you're ready to rock again. So Ross, kind of a little bit all over the place with that answer, but I hope it helps. I hope it gives you some insight as to how I do things. I did not always do that, right? There were times when I thought, man, no, you're here. We're going to put in work. Let's get under a bar. Let's do this. Now it's much easier for me to say, look, I'm going to be the adult here. You're smashed. You're not ready to train at a high level. Even if we did try and do something, you're not going to adapt to it positively. So let's do the smart thing and make sure that we make you a little bit better by the time we have together. So great question, dude. All right. Amy. Hey, Amy. Good to see you here. Amy wants to know, she says, well, let's just read it. She says, my daughter needs to improve her speed for basketball. She's playing lacrosse now and playing 6 days a week. She lifts twice a week. When and how much can she do now, or does she wait? Well, in a perfect world, Amy, she'd do a little bit of speed stuff to start her lacrosse sessions. If she is not doing that, what I would say is when she gets in the gym, speed work, I don't think needs a huge volume, but it needs to be intense and it needs to be impactful. So I would say if you could carve out 5, even as little as 5 to 10 minutes at the start of her lifting sessions and really focus on speed, power, and explosiveness, that will make a positive impact. Now, this comes down to, okay, what does she need, right? Like what's the low-hanging fruit here? Is it a technical issue? Does she not know how to be fast? Okay, then that's what I would spend my time on. Is it more of an output-driven thing? Because I get some kids, they're just not strong enough. Right? Like they don't understand like, hey, I need strength, especially in acceleration and change of direction work. There's a lot of strength involved. So maybe it's a strength related issue. Maybe it's a combination. And something that I've done a lot with my younger, like middle school age kids. So like Kendall and her soccer team, when they come in, a lot of them, it's twofold. They don't understand, let's just say acceleration. They don't understand what good acceleration mechanics should look like. And then once they are there, they don't have the strength contextually to hold the posture and the position and push the way I want them to. So one of the things that worked really well for me, and it killed 2 birds with 1 stone, was just like heavy explosive sled drags and prowler pushes. So putting them in that position, teaching them, hey, I need the knee up. I need you to drive down and back. I need you to chase your shoulders and just find these really good postures and positions to drive from. And so again, I don't know if this will work for you, but it worked incredibly well for these girls where it's like, okay, we're checking the box of they're getting some of the technical aspects down. We're building contextual strength in the posture and position they need to be in. And man, we could literally see it within a session. We would do a couple reps with like a heavy load, right? Where it was more of just like a pure like prowler push. It's effortful, pushing down and back so they could start to feel it. Then we'd lighten it up and we'd make it more of like a march or a run. And now they're starting to understand, okay, this is how I do this. And then we would take that off and we would just have them do like some pure accelerations without tying the arms back into it. And man, it was immediate. They just got it. They understood the posture, the position. They'd gotten, they probably had gotten stronger in that session, but they started to understand what they needed to do more effectively. And over the course of a couple weeks, we saw huge impacts there. So without knowing exactly what your daughter needs to work on, Amy, it's hard for me to give you like a hard and fast answer. But if you are very limited on time, I would say, and speed is a priority, and your strength training twice a week, just put it in up top there. Because if she's not getting it from her other sport or from, whatever else she's doing, then you need to kind of take the onus on you. And it doesn't have to be a massive amount. Again, 5 to 10 minutes, really focused, dedicated work can make a big impact. And then when her season's over, then you can really like double down on that. Great question. Great question. Okay, next. Iguana Punk. Iguana Punk is arguably my most frequent commenter on the page, so appreciate you coming on here, dude. As a male trainer, would you bother taking a pre or post natal course? Yes, here's why. Everything is important, right? And I think if nothing else, having a broader understanding of anatomy and how the human body works is very important. In fact, back in the day when we did like the PRI stuff, they have a whole course on the pelvis and pelvic floor. I thought that was fascinating because that's not something I'd ever been exposed to. And a lot of times Western culture, it's very, taboo to talk about that area of the body, the pelvic region, all that pelvic floor. But it's really important. And once you start to understand, a lot of your female athletes may be dealing with issues from a performance perspective. If your pelvis is here, right, and you play a sport that requires you to jump vertically, that's not ideal. So if we can recapture a better pelvic position, if we can get your pelvic floor to ascend, that's going to help you jump higher. So I think there's absolutely benefit to it. What I would say is, just as a general rule for Con Ed, you need to start with things that will make the biggest immediate impact. So when I was first coming out of school, I never would have taken that course, right? If I'm a 24-year-old dude that wants to like train athletes, probably not. It wouldn't be high on my list. But I think the longer you do this, the more respect you have for how the body works as a whole integrated system and unit. And, knowing all those things, like I would love to dive in on pelvic floor. I've done that a couple times now. My next probably big area is the foot and ankle, right? Because, hey man, there's a lot of stuff going on down there. There's a lot of muscles, a lot of attachments, a lot of bones. There's a lot of individual movements that should be going on and happening. So I would say early on in your career, maybe not the most impactful course unless you're like a pelvic PT, but start broad, start general, start with the things that will be the most impactful. But I think over the course of your career, it behooves you to find, different courses or things that challenge your line of thinking. I would never think of myself as like a Pilates or yoga person, but I find myself being drawn to those areas just to think, okay, what is useful from this that I can then pull in to my overarching philosophy? So without rambling, I hope that answers your question. I think there's value there. Again, start with the things that are most impactful, but then the longer you practice, I think the more benefit there is to going broader and wider and just seeing what else you can bring into the fold. Great question. Wow, Catalyst Physical Therapy, use force plates. Fantastic. So yeah, I'd be looking at something more like, contact times and that sort of thing. I think what you find is contact times are generally higher when athletes are fatigued. So I'd be looking at more measures of that. So whether it's like a rebound jump test or like a 10-5 sort of test, I'd be starting with those things and seeing what kind of numbers you get from that. Great stuff. Okay, let's do a couple more here. Amy says, what are your thoughts on high school kids playing AAU basketball? Is it too much? Man. Well, Amy, let's be honest here. AAU basketball is not going away. There are times that I wish that it would. But I think what we need to respect is, like, there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many games any athlete's body has in them. And when I hear that, like these kids that are showing up for the NBA Combine now have the knees of like 20-year-olds, like mid-20s or late 20-year-olds, I mean, that's worrisome, right? We're exceeding their capacity to recover. Like the load is exceeding capacity. So I think what we need to do, and if Mike Robertson is like running the basketball space, is hey, look, I think we need to put an emphasis on one or the other. I think that would be a starting point, right? Like, are you really committed to your high school team or are you really committed to your AAU team? And whichever one you are less committed to, you need to put a bigger emphasis on your physical preparation during that period of time. So, hey, man, if you play for an amazing high school team, which I don't know how many people do anymore unless they go to like a prep school, great. You play for an amazing high school team. When you get to AAU, you're going to get a little bit more time in the weight room, right? And you know basketball is going to take a backseat. Or vice versa. If you play on an amazing AAU team and your high school team isn't very good, well, hey, take care of your body now so that when AAU hits, you're ready to go. But I think one of the bigger things here is just helping kids understand like all the things that are important to being a successful athlete. It's time in the gym. It's learning how to fuel and hydrate your body appropriately. It's getting enough rest. It's learning how to manage and mitigate stress, teaching them about mindset and meditation. There's just so much more that we can do now. Like back in the day, we just used to think, oh, let's just get them in the gym and get them strong and that'll help. Absolutely. It will make a huge difference. And trust me, that's a big selling point for what I do. But I mean, kids now, I couldn't imagine being a high school kid right now. And I've got a 13-year-old daughter. She's like 2 years out. So that makes me nervous. It makes me nervous thinking about all the things because she's not on like really any social media right now, at least not like the big ones like Facebook, TikTok, IG. Just being inundated with all of that, plus school, plus sports. So like just teaching them how to manage and mitigate stress, how to take care of their body, how to focus on themselves. This is beyond like all just like the basketball type stuff. It's teaching them how to be a normal functioning human being that's self-sufficient and takes care of themselves. I think that's where we have to start. And then we can focus on like the basketball stuff. They need dedicated periods of downtime. You can't like go from high school to AAU to open gym and high-end skill development. Like there just has to be dedicated patches of time where they take care of their body, where they develop their game. Because what ends up happening ultimately is they spend all their time playing games, right? They're not taking the time to develop their bodies. They're not taking the time to develop their skills. And those are the things that a lot of kids need, unless you're, one of these kids that I work with where you're a top 5, top 10 national recruit. If you're just like a kid that's trying to make a high school team, you don't need to go play your high school season, play your AAU season, play June ball, play every pickup league imaginable. Like you need dedicated time to work on your body, become more physically powerful, explosive, whatever the case may be, bigger, faster, stronger. But you also need skill development. You need to work on the individual skills that will make you a better basketball player. And I think that's what we're missing. We're so focused on, hey, high school season, AAU season, June ball. We're so focused on playing the games and the competition and the showcases that we've missed a lot of the individual development that needs to happen for you to be a great basketball player. And I think that's one thing that I'm trying to infuse in what we do with our high school kids. That's why I'm trying to infuse our high school, college, and pros kind of all into the same. It's not exactly the same bucket, but I want them all around each other in the summer. So these high school and college kids can see, oh, these pros do it differently. Ed Sumner is there 5 days a week at 8 a.m., right? And he has a shake before he goes on the gym floor. And then we train for an hour, 15 minutes. He's got another shake when he gets off. And then as soon as he's done, he's going to the gym and he's getting his shots up. He's doing his individual work. That's 5 days a week. He's locked in. So that's how you play in the NBA, or that's how you play in the Euro League. So trying to help these kids understand it's not just about playing more games. It's about doing the things necessary to make yourself the best possible basketball player you can be. Good stuff. Good stuff. Catalyst, good. You're good. Amy, helpful. Good. Austin, thanks for coming on, man. Coaching question. Any advice on dealing with difficult clients? Whew, man, I have had some difficult ones over the years. Yes. Let's start with try and figure out why they are being difficult to start with. One of the things that I have found over the years is that the difficult people are generally very unhappy outside of the gym. So learning to take myself out of that equation, and that's really hard. I take everything personal. I'm a people pleaser. I want everybody to like me. So there has been just times over the years where I've been so focused on trying to help people, like I end up becoming the brunt of their pain and their anguish and their discomfort. So that's not cool. So you have to just untether yourself from what's going on with them outside of the gym, because that is a huge piece of this. Like, again, a lot of the people that come in the gym and they're, taking it out on you, it's not a you thing, it's a them thing. So untethering yourself is number one. Number two is trying to help them come up with strategies, to deal with the things that are going on in their life. And man, it sucks. I have a minor in counseling psychology, and I never got into this space to be a psychologist or a therapist, but I think any of us that have done it long enough know sometimes we turn into that role. So there are times where I will try and, within my scope of reason, try and help them come up with strategies like, okay, hey, I get it. You're super stressed, or work is really awful right now, or your husband is just not a great human being. Okay, great. I can't deal with all of those, but hey, what are some things that we have control over? Right? Well, hey, you can come into the gym 2 to 3 days a week, right? You can have more control over the things that you eat. You can make sure that instead of getting 5 hours of sleep a night, you're getting 7.5 or 8, right? Like starting to help them take some of that control back over, I think can be helpful. But unpopular answer, Austin, is that if you don't have to train them, you don't have to train them. And this is something that has taken me a while. And I think Bill and I we've had to fire a couple clients over the years. And those are never comfortable conversations. But man, we had one lady that trained at our gym for years. She was awesome. She was almost kind of like a pseudo employee. She was there early on Saturdays and she would make coffee. And man, at one point things just took like a really nasty dive. And Bill, especially, he put so much time and effort into this woman. And, she just started complaining. And then there were these like massively long emails. And finally, Bill was just like, you know what? This is fine. If this is not the place for you, then, you need to go somewhere else. And she did. And so there are those moments where, man, this conversation is incredibly uncomfortable, but it's kind of like firing an employee. Like once it happens and you get through that initial discomfort of, man, this sucks and I feel bad about this and, what are they going to do? Once you get through all of that, ultimately, I find both parties feel better. And that's kind of the way that I've approached this is, I've had a couple people over the years, like 1 or 2 online clients where I'm like, look, this is an online environment. I can only do so much for you. I can't be there with you in the gym every day. I can't be your personal accountability person where we're like texting and calling every single day. Like that's not how this situation works. And so, yeah, when those situations happen, if you feel like you've exhausted your efforts or you don't feel like you're making progress, that's where it's time to kind of let them go. And, I think part of this is just how you phrase it too. Just letting people know like, look, man, I love you. I want to see you be successful, but I just don't feel like I'm the right fit. So it's not like you're telling them, yo, you're an awful person. I never want to see you again. It doesn't have to come across like that. Because again, if somebody spent time to work with me, like I genuinely value them, like as a human, as somebody that's been coming to my gym, like I just might not be the best fit. And it's hard to admit that because we all want to think we're the best person for everybody. But man, sometimes I just realize like, look, I'm just not the best fit for this person, whether it's, my programming style, how I coach, maybe I'm too friendly. Maybe they want somebody that's just going to crack the whip and yell at them. I don't know. But I think once you get to a certain point, I've talked about this numerous times, but Alan Cosgrove taught me this very early on in my career, like the A, B, C, D clients. So an A-level client is somebody you would train for free, shows up on time or early every day. They pay all their bills on time, if not early. They refer people. They're smiling. They're happy. They're like the most amazing client. That's your A-level client. Your D-level client never shows up on time. They complain their entire session. You're constantly chasing them down for money. They badmouth your business when they're not in there. When you open a gym or when you first start like training and coaching people, you take anybody, right? Like when Bill and I opened iFast, hey, if you had a heartbeat and a checkbook, we're letting you in the gym. But over time, we progressively work to, prune those clients. And so I wanted to get to a point, and where I'm at now, I only train A-level clients. Like if somebody came to me and they're like, Mike, like, oh man, I had this injury, or my dad lost his job, I can't pay, I would train him for free. Right? That's where I'm at. But that should be a goal for you. So when you're starting off, A, B, C, D doesn't matter. You got to make ends meet. You got to, take care of yourself, your family. I get that. But the longer you do this, the more you should work to just prune those lower level clients that are taking away more than they're giving you. So, Austin, long-winded answer, but I hope that helps, because, man, we've all dealt with it. We've all had those clients where we're like, you want to help them, but like kind of my litmus test here is I can't want this for you more than you want this for you. So that's something I'm always thinking about. Okay, last one here. Amy has one more question. Amy says, any good resources or programs to teach mindset for athletes that you are aware of? Man. So I haven't done like a ton of his work. I'll give you a couple, Amy. There's a guy locally, Dr. Rob Bell. I think he's got a couple books. He's just an amazing human being, and I know we've referred some athletes to him over the years. He would be a great place to start. I actually have a guy coming on the podcast tomorrow, Dr. Greg Wells, and I think he's kind of like in the recovery-ish space, but I know he talks about mindset. I think one of the most important things you can do to teach mindset to kids, twofold. Number one, I wish somebody would have taught me to meditate earlier. And meditation probably wasn't a thing 30 years ago, so I don't even know if I can say that. But it is a thing now, right? So getting my kids started on like a headspace, a calm, waking up, some form of like guided meditation early on, I think is very, very valuable. The other piece to that, I think, is what you're trying to instill in your kids. And if I can wax philosophical here for a minute, this is something that I'm really trying to instill in my kids, is this idea of a growth mindset. This idea of, look, oh, you had a great game? Awesome. What did you do well? Great. What's one thing you can do better next time, right? Like always trying to balance the scales. The next day, I mean, literally this happened this weekend. Kendall played arguably one of her best games ever on Friday night. Like her team played amazing, but they got a draw, which sucks. That's one of the things I hate about soccer. You can play an amazing game and you tie. Not cool. But okay, what did you do well? What are you going to work on next time? Okay, great. The next day they went indoors and she plays with like kind of like a different team and they got smacked. Okay, so she was upset, and rightfully so. They got smacked. Okay, but what did you do well? Well, hey, you did these things well, right? Like you had some really good turns. You had some really good passes. You made some really good runs. Like you really defended well. So like trying to constantly have this growth mindset of, okay, you can't always control the outcome, but the process. What can you do that's going to help you improve the process of getting better? And for me, it's sports, right? That's part of why I'm in this space. It's the sports or it's the weight room, because it's such a great vehicle to teach lessons of life. And that's one thing my high school basketball coach taught me at a very young age, was like, hey, look, basketball is like this microcosm of life. And so the lessons you learn in basketball, if you're observant and if you apply them, can apply to just about anywhere in life. And so that's something I always took, with me. And I've always tried to instill in the clients and athletes that I work with is, hey, look, the things that you do in the gym can carry over to everywhere else in your life. So I think that for me, that's really important, is just having those little discussions. I love those moments, again, because I got a teenager now, which is weird. So, she wants to be, like listening to music or talking to her friends. So like those moments in the car are really impactful times where we can have these discussions of, okay, hey, look, I'm just trying to like recenter and refocus her and start to build and cultivate that growth mindset. So I would say twofold. Number one, the conversations, discussions, examples you're setting for her. And then number two, getting them started like with mindset meditation, because that won't just help with the mindset part, but it'll help, as they get older, stress reduction, anxiety, depression, all the things that we hear young kids are dealing with at earlier and earlier ages. I think I would be starting with that right now. So, man, this was amazing, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. I didn't know how it would go. I feel like it was pretty successful, though. You guys had some great questions. And if you like this kind of stuff, I'm happy to do it, even if it's just like once a quarter, something like that. Keep it fresh. I enjoy this type of thing, and I want to make our space better. I want to help people like you. So, man, hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you know when we do this again. But man, thank you guys so much for your support. Love and appreciate you, and we'll be back soon. All right, take care.